Donald Trump continues to try to block the deposition of Pam Bondi. Trump has been working with House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, and they are now saying that Pam Bondi will not sit for a video deposition. What she will sit for is a, quote, transcribed interview, but she doesn't want to be on camera. She just wants to sit for a transcribed interview. And get this, the Trump regime is going to utilize a top DOJ lawyer who's going to now pretend she's working in her personal capacity, not as the top DOJ lawyer, to represent Pam Bondi. Yep, they're saying that Harmeet Dillon, who is the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights within the DOJ, it's like the number 3 position in the entire DOJ. She says that she's basically going to transition for purposes of this transcribed interview to her role as a private lawyer. She still has a law firm in California, and she will be utilizing the Harmeet Dillon law firm, and she will be the lawyer in a private capacity, she says. And that's who will be representing Pam Bondi at a transcribed interview. But they do not want this on video. They're trying to set terms to keep this very short. They are running scared. And it's frankly unprecedented in the entire history of the DOJ to have a top DOJ official saying that they're going to be representing somebody in their capacity as a private lawyer while they're a top DOJ official, yet alone the fact that it's the former attorney general and the former head of the DOJ. Are there any conflicts that this Trump regime is not willing not only to engage in, but embrace and tear down the complete credibility of the DOJ, which, face it, was frankly destroyed a long time ago? Democrats are calling out this stunt, and Democrats are calling out Trump in public for what they're doing. What the hell is this? So here's what we learned this morning, that House Oversight Democrats revealed in this new letter that the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, again, the number 3 person at the entire DOJ, who basically sits directly under Todd Blanch right now, Harmeet Dillon, is representing Pam Bondi in a proceeding before the committee in her personal capacity, not as a DOJ, because the DOJ can't represent her, and the DOJ should be focused on exposing the criminals in the sex trafficking ring, revealing what happened, not continuing this damn cover up. And of course, this raises ethics concerns. And not only does it raise ethics concerns, they don't want Bondi to be videotaped either. Folks, red flag, red flag, red flag, right? I mean, everything this Trump regime does is transparently crooked. This is the most crooked regime ever. Okay, here's the letter from earlier today from the Democrats calling out James Comer, Trump, Bondi, Harmeet, this whole crew. Dear Chairman Comer, as you know, on April 29, 2026, over 2 weeks after former Attorney General Pam Bondi failed to appear at her April 14, 2026 deposition, Oversight Democrats introduced a resolution to enforce the committee's bipartisan subpoena. In response, your staff announced to the press that you had secured an agreement for Ms. Bondi to appear on May 29, 2026. Just pause for a second. I will show you where the House Oversight Committee and James Comer's, the Democrats are just a bunch of drama, because Democrats introduced a contempt motion, not drama, to hold somebody damn accountable who's covering up a child sex trafficking ring. That's what the Democrats were doing. And so Republicans we already secured her appearance May 29th. So you would think that would mean an appearance for a public hearing so we can all see Pam Bondi squirm, so she can be deposed on a sicko cover-up of a child sex trafficking ring. But they're like, okay, you want to do a video deposition, then do a deposition under oath. We'll publish that video right here on the MeidasTouch network, and millions of people will watch it as soon as it's done. But now we learn they don't want to do video. The letter goes on to say, committee Democrats welcome the opportunity to question Ms. Bondi on the record and seek answers about the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as the Department of Justice's ongoing failure to produce the Epstein files pursuant to this committee's subpoena to DOJ and the Epstein Files Transparency Act. We understand that you have agreed to hold this as a transcribed interview rather than a deposition. While we believe a deposition is the best available forum, as chairman, this is your decision. However, if you choose to move forward with a transcribed interview, I am concerned with three aspects. One, the videotaping of Miss Bondi's testimony. Miss Bondi's testimony must be filmed and made available to the American people. Damn right it must be filmed and available. This Trump regime, they use their state regime media, which calls itself Fox. They want to get out all their lies. Now sit under oath and answer damn questions or invoke the Fifth Amendment like the mob does, okay? Do what you want. Who said that? Number two, Miss Bondi's willingness to provide substantive and complete testimony. If Miss Bondi refuses to answer questions, we must compel her testimony. Miss Bondi has been subpoenaed and all questions posed by members must be answered. In other words, Bondi doesn't want to answer questions. Goes on to say, Harmeet Dillon's participation as Miss Bondi's attorney. Miss Dillon is a current DOJ employee and her representation raises serious ethical concerns and conflicts of interest. A failure to film and release a video of Miss Bondi's testimony would present a grave injustice to the American people and survivors of Epstein crimes, all of whom are calling upon Congress for transparency. Filming and releasing a recording are critical to providing the public with an unvarnished, candid view of Miss Bondi's testimony and capturing aspects that a transcript simply cannot, such as her demeanor, expression, and conduct. Allowing Miss Bondi to testify without being filmed is also a sharp departure from your practice with other prominent witnesses who have appeared before this committee related to the Epstein investigation. This includes Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Ghislaine Maxwell, Darren Indike, Richard Kahn, and Les Wexner, whose videotaped testimony were quickly released for the American people. You have agreed to permit former Attorney General Bondi to appear before this committee in a transcribed interview rather than a sworn deposition, which he is required to do pursuant to the subpoena that this committee duly issued to her on March 17, 2026. Ms. Bondi has already demonstrated a disregard for this committee's subpoena and its investigative authority, having refused to acknowledge her legal obligation to comply with the subpoena and to appear for a deposition on the date that the subpoena set forth. In other words, she's doing a transcribed interview, not a sworn deposition, because she doesn't want to go under oath. She doesn't want to testify under oath in a deposition. Already, this entire thing is a sham then, right? Why would we even want to do this? You want a transcribed interview? Remember when we reported a few weeks back that this was going to be the Trump DOJ plan and all the MAGA people were like, oh, MeidasTouch, they're just being hyperbolic. MeidasTouch, We said, no, we have heard from our sources that the plan is that they're going to be doing these interviews. They're not going to be doing hearings anymore or sworn depositions. This was the plan. That's exactly what's going on right here. She's going to show up and think she's going to just roll over the committee. No, the American people need to see this damn video. That's what we need to see. As you know, transcribed interview is purely a voluntary proceeding that enables the witness to decline to answer any question without specifying a valid ground for doing so. Indeed, you rejected the offers of Bill Clinton and Secretary Hillary Clinton earlier this year to provide transcribed interviews rather than depositions to the committee precisely for this reason, emphasizing that a transcribed interview is voluntary, meaning that the subject may refuse to answer questions absent any assertion of privilege or constitutional right. In other words, you rejected the Clintons' offer to do a transcribed interview. They wanted to do a transcribed interview because, one, Hillary Clinton's not even in the Epstein files. Two, Bill Clinton's like, you're just going to drag me in here to try to waste my time. I'm happy to answer questions. Why don't we start with a transcribed interview? And if you want to do a deposition after, do a deposition after. But the Clintons were forced to sit for they finally said, okay, we'll sit for a deposition, fine. But the heart of this matter is Pam Bondi. She's the one, not Hillary Clinton, not Bill Clinton, frankly, not any of these other people. Pam Bondi's at the heart of the cover-up. That's who the American people want to see. And you're doing transcribed interview, no video. It's utterly pathetic. The letter goes on to say, these extraordinary accommodations of Miss Bondi to avoid a formal deposition also appear, at least in part, to be designed to avoid the rules of the committee by permitting her to be represented in this proceeding by Harmeet Dillon, the sitting Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the DOJ and reportedly a leading candidate to succeed Bondi as Attorney General. Assistant Attorney General Dillon's attendance at a deposition on behalf of Miss Bondi would plainly violate this committee's Rule 15E, which limits the attendance of attorneys on behalf of witnesses at depositions to 2 designated non-governmental attorneys and specifies that other persons, including government agency, may not attend. Although Assistant Attorney General has refused to engage with the committee, Democratic staff, her and the DOJ's actions to date suggest that she is acting in an official capacity in her apparent representation of Bondi. DOJ staff provided her official DOJ cell phone number when it referred Democratic oversight staff to her as counsel for Miss Bondi, and the Assistant Attorney General has posted on X in connection with Miss Bondi's appearance before the committee from the handle @Harmeet Dillon. If Assistant Attorney General Dillon purports to represent Bondi in a personal capacity, contrary to appearances, then her engagement raises troubling ethical concerns. In that case, there would be a clear conflict of interest between Miss Dillon's duties to the DOJ and to Miss Bondi's individually. Such an engagement would also quite clearly violate DOJ policy, which provides unambiguously that absent a waiver by the Deputy Attorney General on specific grounds, no employee may engage in the practice of law unless it is uncompensated and in the nature of community service, unless it is on behalf of himself, his parents, spouse, or children. By no reasonable interpretation does Assistant Attorney General Dillon's representation of Bondi in this matter fall within these limitations. In the interest of ensuring that Miss Bondi provides truthful and complete answers to the numerous outstanding and urgent factual questions surrounding Epstein and Maxwell, as well as providing a complete transparent window into her testimony, I urge you to ensure that Miss Bondi's testimony is consistent with her obligations under the committee's subpoena and film the proceeding. The demands of justice, transparency for Jeffrey Epstein survivors require no less. So they're already saying no deposition, the Republicans. Informal, transcribe, no video, which is complete and utter BS. And then finally, I'll just share this with you from this weekend when Todd Blanch was on the weekend morning shows, Meet the Press. He was asked about Bondi's communications with Donald Trump and how Trump posted, "Bondi, I need you to go after my political opponents." And Kristen Welker, to her credit, at least in this part, says, that was all Donald Trump meant to send private messages to Bondi about that. Like that was supposed to be a private, direct message. And watch Todd Blanch squirm. But here's the thing, too, we need to learn from Bondi's deposition. Well, or I guess it's a transcribed interview now. The way Donald Trump would communicate. We should look at her documents, her messages, her email. Does he send these messages on Truth Social? Anyway, here, let's play this clip so you can see for yourself.
Let's talk big picture. Back on September 20th, President Trump publicly posted a private message to then Attorney General Pam Bondi, pressuring her to prosecute Senator Adam Schiff, James Comey, and Letitia James, writing, quote, "They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. They impeached me twice. They indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now." Why should the public believe that any case brought against the individuals listed there is an independent law enforcement decision and not retribution?
Well, because you have investigations and you have indictments and you have the result. I mean, listen, if years later you're judged by a simple note from President Trump, by the way, that wasn't a private message. That was a message delivered to the entire world.
Right.
And so this is not being done behind closed doors.
But it was meant to be private initially, based on
How
my
do you know it was meant to be
conversations.
private?
Based on my conversations, it was meant to be.
Well, I'm not
with
aware of
top
those conversations, but
administration officials. It was meant to be private and posted by mistake.
President Trump is very clear with the American people what he expects as president of the United States. That is not something he hides from the American people. He wants justice. He wants full investigations where appropriate. And by the way, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Everybody in this country should want that. And so, no, I don't operate based upon concern or fear. The American people will know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And yet,
and then we should take Todd Blanch's deposition. Scott McFarlane at the MeidasTouch Network caught up with Massie last week, a Republican Congress member. Here's what Massie told him. Let's play this clip.
What's going to happen next? You're trying to get Pam Bondi in here.
Yeah, I can also go find her.
The guy that's pulling the levers is now the guy in the hot seat, which is Todd Blanch. I don't think she was ever in the loop. When she released the binders full of nothingness, I don't think anybody told her it had nothingness in it.
You might be more interested in talking to Mr. Blanch then, as a committee.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but he will eventually come to the Judiciary Committee. It's incumbent on the Attorney General to show up at least once a year in front of the committee that I serve on. So I'm not on the Oversight Committee, which is talking about doing behind closed doors interviews, depositions. But I am on the Judiciary Committee, and I look forward to having Todd Blanch in front of us sometime this soon. I think it should be soon because he's now the Attorney General, and he's never been in front of the Judiciary Committee in that capacity.
There you have it, folks. Let me know what you all think. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.